From the last one for Mom to My Miracle, here are some of the top highest rated episodes of Chicago Fire according to IMDb.
You have done a tremendous job with this budget.
Thanks, Chief.
All of your creative trims, these numbers are exactly where they need to be. So, if you want to ease up on the gas now.
Starting with the one that was wild from start to finish. Now, as you know, Chicago Fire's been on for 11 seasons, and when it wants to make you feel something, it does. House 51 had more of the same in this 20th episode of Season 4. In the episode titled The Last for Mom, Detective Holloway has to testify in her drug case, so she leaves her son JJ with the other kids at the house. But something goes wrong, and Severide hears that she has been shot. While each member talks about their childhood dreams, Severide has to keep the news from JJ until his aunt from California gets there. This episode was a wild ride for my emotions for sure, but probably not as much as this next crossover one, Death Trap. The 15th episode of Season 5 can only be described in terms of emotion, and more emotion. This was the moment that Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, and Chicago Med were made for as part of a crossover event. Bowden had to make the hard decision to pull his men out of the burning building because Olinsky's daughter was stuck inside. Even though Olinsky argued his case, it was a touching moment that changed both shows for the better. One of the best storylines in the history of One Chicago took all 3 episodes to finish. All the important stuff goes down in the firehouse, but this next episode showed that there are times when it can happen in other places too. Telling her goodbye. The 16th episode of Season 5 has a pretty solid rating, and for good reason.
She's demanding I give her Violet McCombie's spot at Firehouse 51, or she's gonna level false accusations that are gonna be hard to disprove.
Because of your indelicate relationship with McCombie.
House 51 was in the middle of a turf war between 2 gangs. That's when thugs decided to storm the house to get help for a friend who was hurt. Instead of trying to be diplomatic, the members of the gang decide to take everyone inside as hostages. That's when things get a little messy. During the process, Casey's shot, but he's not the only one. Stella puts herself in more danger when she tries to calm down the situation. Later, SWAT comes to help, and soon everything's fine. It was one of the most exciting things to happen on Chicago Fire. Of course, even episodes with characters dying can be good objectively, just like this next one was. Carry Me. In the 20th episode of Season 5, Matt's still upset about what Jason Cannell's going through. That's why he decides to ask Bowden for help to clear Jason Cannell's name. Cannell's still upset about what happened, and he wants nothing more to do with the CFD. But Casey doesn't plan to give up without a fight. The other part of the episode's the part that everyone hoped wouldn't happen. It's hard to see people you don't know die, but seeing the pain Kelly went through with Anna was enough to break even the strongest man.
What is this lead you're chasing down?
There's a certain individual we've had our eye on for a while.
Speaking of characters almost dying, here's yet another episode that played with my fears, The Chance to Forgive. In the 15th episode of the 6th season, Otis and Kid are caught in a fire that turns into gunfire, mainly because there's live ammunition around. Stella doesn't get hurt because her radio stopped a bullet, but Otis gets hit in the neck. Since the bullet's close to his spine, surgery is risky. Choi checks on Otis and notices that he can't feel his toes. That's when it gets serious. Kid and Kelly also finally have a moment at Molly's. This is the start of their up and down relationship, which will go on for a long time. I mean, it was about time Kelly did the right thing and told Stella how he felt about her, because that definitely had us all at the edge of our seats. Now, remember how I mentioned a crossover episode earlier? Well, it looks like people really love these, because I've got another one for you.
Was that guy giving you trouble?
Me, the medics? Guy just seemed to have a beef with first responders.
Was he involved in the accident?
I don't think so.
So he just...
Going to war. In the first third of another Chicago crossover, House 51 is once again facing death. Since there's a fire in a high-rise, the team has to go up the stairs. Otis loses sight of a mother and child and thinks they may have gone to an elevator. When the doors finally opened, it may have been one of the saddest moments in Chicago Fire. On a sad note for the Chicago team, Jay Halstead's father dies in this crossover. He was trying to be a hero and save one of his friends who was trapped in the same same building. Of course, that death totally changes Jay's life in I'm Not Leaving You. Just another day at House 51. In the last episode of Season 7, Severide's still looking into a case that his father worked on. As he gets more tired, he finally gets a break and is able to close the case in honor of his dad. In another part of the story, Matt's trying to decide what to do about how he feels about Brett. Just as he's about to do something, the chaplain shows up. The house gets a call that changes will be made to Chicago Fire in the future. Everyone in the warehouse that's on fire's in danger, and by the time you get to the cliffhanger, you know that someone won't make it. Who is it? Well, I'll leave that for you to find out.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Must be. It's gonna make us late.
Now, people loved this next episode a lot, mainly because of the major cliffhanger and events that happened in it. Real never waits. In the 22nd episode of the second season, Gabby passes the test to become a firefighter. No one's surprised when she's sent to House 105 to work with Welch, one of the worst leaders. Dawson doesn't take the easy way out. Instead, she stays. Of course, they respect her. But Real Never Waits wasn't just about Dawson becoming a smoke eater. The topic of this one was the future. Speaking of, Chief Bowden decided to get married right away at the fire hose. This made Casey feel something, so he got down on one knee in front of Gabby and asked her to marry him. But that's not the point. This is also the start of the relationship between Mouch and Trudy, and I know there was a cliffhanger at the end.
Wow, you're really, what's the word?
We played Scrabble like once at her apartment.
But let's just focus on this ambitious crossover for a second. I Am the Apocalypse. Originally a Chicago Fire episode, this episode was actually the start of another spin-off called Chicago Med. Most of the people in House 51 were quarantined because they were having trouble breathing because of a disease that can kill. The firefighters and civilians get locked in the hospital with a cast that would later get their own show. We met some new people, one of whom's Dr. Halstead, Jay Halstead's brother. Jay's a member of the intelligence unit. When a crazy person with a grenade calls himself the Apocalypse, it's a surprise. This episode was a check to see how well all three shows work together, and it surprisingly worked.
Might finally get us that indictment.
I'm in.
How soon can you meet with the prosecutor?
How about right now? I have the shift off.
You had to rest your bruised ribs.
The Chicagoverse is loved by all fans, just like this next episode, My Miracle. This season finale has a lot going on and a lot of feelings. In the episode, Dawson and Casey are still arguing about Dawson's father and him staying in their house, so they're at odds with each other. Meanwhile, Casey runs into a building and is almost ready to give up. Of course, this makes Dawson love Casey again and makes him love her again. Mouch doesn't feel like he can do his job anymore, so he's thinking about retiring. The people who voted for this one on IMDb did a great job choosing My Miracle as one of the best, mainly because it's got everything, from action to drama to suspense to a cliffhanger of a finale, so you're in for a treat every time you tune in.
It's the food truck opioid dealer. These two are muscle. He's got a right hook like George Foreman. The rest, I don't know.
With that, that's all for the top highest rated episodes of Chicago Fire according to IMDb.